Hello gardeners, Lourdes with Native Plant Channel, and today we're taking a look at an area that has been newly planted, so a recently planted area for you to give you some ideas. Now this was unplanned. On Christmas morning I woke up to two very large evergreen trees that had fallen due to a storm, so it presented an opportunity. I missed the shade because they did provide shade, but it presented an opportunity to plant a new area. This is the aftermath of the storm, and we're really blessed that the only damage was to a fence that's under one of the trees. Creating this area took time. First thing we had to do was call in a landscaper to level the area and plant grass seed, as you see the grass behind me, because the root balls had ripped everything up. So now the ground was no longer level and needed to be leveled, and the lawn needed to be replanted. Now, I'm not one who's fanatical about lawns, and it can only be, great grasses. So, it's just a good enough lawn that will remain green. It will have some weeds, but it will look good enough. The reason for just creating the good enough lawn is that you won't need to be using a ton of fertilizers or weed killers or anything like that. So it doesn't have to be perfect, but it will be green, it will be usable, it'll be an area that can support heavy traffic. So there were two areas of plants that were already here under the trees or next to the trees. You'll see this area in the front and in the back. So the trees were located in the center area that is more bare right now. The first one we're going to take a look at is what was already here, and that is this plant, which is called wood oats or river oats, and as you can see, it does grow tall. So you can be fooled because it starts out very low growing and then in a few years gets really tall. However, the seeds are very attractive, and I've pointed this out before in some videos that to me it reminds me of a fishing pole with all the little fish arching over. The seeds change colors and will become a little more light brown as the season wears on, and they are attracted to birds. The birds will come in and eat them. It's an easy to grow plant, and it tolerates wet areas. It does reseed heavily, and again it starts out looking like a low growing grass and then will take off and become rather tall. The other plant that was already in the area is what you're going to see in the back. Let's go take a closer look back there. The plant behind me is eastern bluestar. It blooms in the spring with silvery blue star-shaped flowers. So it provides some color very early in the spring. It does get some decent fall color, turns a little bit yellowish in the fall. Not great, but it does get some decent color. And as you can see, it looks more like a shrub than it does a perennial. So it's kind of shrubby looking. It does flop during the rain, so when it rains heavily and you come out, you're like, oh, that looks terrible because it's flopping over. But then it will regain its form afterwards. Right now there's a little skipper in here. Let me see if I can show you that better, but there's a little skipper resting on it. I'll try and get in there for you. So here's a little skipper resting on the eastern bluestar. And that's what you want to do. That's why at Native Plant Channel, we're trying to create better habitats so that your garden can be full of places that butterflies, bees, and other insects will enjoy. Another important feature of what you're going to be taking a look at today is that this is being designed to be deer resistant, which is why I'm not so sure if it shows up yet on the video, but you're seeing cages, plants surrounded by cages. I live in an area of very high deer pressure, so if this applies to you too, you're going to get some ideas about some plants you can use and also how to better protect your plants. So the wood oats are very highly deer resistant. I don't have a problem with them being eaten by the deer, but most of the other plants, especially when they're new, they need to be protected, because even if they turn out to be deer resistant in time, deer will browse anything young and new, and with a young brand new plant that could actually kill the plant. So in the beginning, I make sure that I protect them in order not to lose them. The items were planted were purchased as plugs for the most part. Some I have divided up from somewhere else in the garden and moved them here, or transplanted them from a different place in the garden. I will mention what those are. But mostly the ones that you're seeing that are young and small are going to be because they were purchased as plugs. When the trees were removed, the stumps were ground, which resulted in there being a lot of wood in this bed, which is not a good growing situation for the plants. So I had to dig holes 2 foot wide by 1 foot deep and put in about a half a bag of topsoil in each hole, even though I was planting very small plugs. But otherwise they would not be able to get enough nitrogen from the soil. So this is Helenium. The common name for it is sneezeweed, and these come in orange and yellows and rusty colors, so they bloom very nicely. Now they've grown pretty quickly because although they were started as plugs or planted as plugs, you can see that they are a fairly good size now, and they bloom later in the summer into the fall. They do have a long bloom period. I do not expect them to be deer resistant because they don't have the usual features such as a strong fragrance or gray leaves or fuzzy leaves. So I do not expect them to be deer resistant, even though they are often advertised as being that. Next to the Helenium over here I have little bluestem, probably my favorite grass. It has the blue foliage and it just has nice seed heads as well later in the season. It makes a very attractive grass and is also the host plant for a number of skippers. There is one larger specimen of little bluestem that you'll still see here that had been previously planted before the trees fell down. So you can see this one is sending up its flowering spikes so you can get a better idea of what it looks like. Another grass that I'm using here is Cytodes grama. This one I've purchased to try something new, and this one should have some purplish tones to it in the fall. So interesting seed heads and some purplish tones in the fall. So I'm looking forward to seeing how it grows. Again, this is very young, so there's not much I'm expecting from it right now. Towards the back behind it here is slender mountain mint, and I hope for this one to be very deer tolerant because I do have clustered mountain mint, which is this one's leaves are much thinner, hence its name, and aromatic, and it will bloom with white flowers, and it will be very attractive to pollinators. Behind the mountain mint is our native switchgrass. Again, I have not protected the grasses with cages because I'm confident that the deer will not eat them, and they have not. Now we're moving on to something with more silvery looking foliage. This is rattlesnake master. I do expect this one to be deer resistant as it has very sharp edges on the spine. It has a grayish color. And it's really when you touch the leaves, you'll know that it's really a rather rough plant. So I do expect it to survive the deer pressure here. In front of it, the nice leafy green one is anise hyssop, a plant that I widely use. And let's see, over here it's in bloom. These were transplanted from other places in my garden. These do a great job of feeding the bees. The bees love them. And the goldfinches love the seeds. So I get to see goldfinches on them in July and August almost on a daily basis. Okay, so let's take a look now at beard tongue. These will grow probably about 3 feet tall, although you can never know because I have plants that are predicted to be a certain size and then turn out to be, usually it's much taller than what I expected them to be. So we will see how these work out. They will have white flowers. They'll have a rather bell-shaped flowers, which look very attractive. And so we'll have another flowering plant here, and that's next to the anise hyssop. In the back, I'm going to take you to the back where I have Culver's root, a tall growing perennial and with white spires as flowers. And again, another one that's very attractive to pollinators, so I do expect this one to fill in and get very tall. Now we're going to be taking a look at orange milkweed, planting something here for the monarch butterflies. So orange milkweed has beautiful orange flowers. They're attractive to monarchs. They provide pollen for a number of insects. They do have long tap roots, so they don't like to be moved. So once you've put them in one place, don't expect to move them because they probably won't survive the move. In the back, I planted a tulip tree that came from elsewhere on my property. This is about 2 or 3 years old. They are fast growing, so I am hoping for something that's going to provide some shade soon. So I planted this as a shade tree, and it does provide benefits, has very interesting flowers, and does provide benefits to a number of wildlife. Tulip tree is not a good choice for a small garden because this does grow into a huge tree. But because it was a seedling growing elsewhere on my property, I'm going to give it a try, and then we'll see what happens in a number of years. So I am planning to add other plants that are not here yet, but in the fall I'm planning to add Pearly Everlasting to this area. That's a plant that I enjoy very much. Has grown here very successfully, is deer resistant, blooms for a long time. Let me give you a good look at that one. That blooms in white, has silvery gray foliage, and it's important because it is the host plant for the American lady caterpillar. It does start blooming late July, August, and will go on for quite a while, still pretty much into, well into September. And you'll be able to host the American lady butterfly by planting this. It's a plant that's used by people also who like dry flowers. They can be dried and used in dry flower arrangements. Good design involves repetition, which is why it's important that I add Pearly Everlasting to my new bed, because I do have quite a bit of it in the existing bed. Thank you so much for what you're doing to make our world a better place by using native plants in your gardens and creating better habitat. You can find more information on Native Plant Channel's Facebook page. Also, please subscribe so that you can be notified when new videos are posted. Follow us. You're going to be learning so much more, and I will continue to show you how this garden is growing, how the plants are doing. So I hope you have enjoyed it. Have a great day.